Hi, you've joined us with Your Battles Rally Point. This is your host, Cole Warner, CEO of Baldwin Priestmeyer and a Master Sergeant in the Army Reserves. I'm joined here today with my co-host,
Sheila Schneider. I'm the Executive Director of the Kaufman Fund and a proud military spouse. Joining us today is Will Wisner. Wisner.
It's Wisner. Yeah.
I was like, hold on, I said that wrong.
No one ever gets that right. Okay.
With Grunt Style Foundation, a great organization that's been working with us over here at the Kaufman Fund for a couple of years now and doing amazing things. Will, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the invitation to come on. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So, Will, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm a Missouri native. I grew up down in southwest Missouri in the Ozark Mountains. I was in the military from 1992 through pretty much the end of 2008. I got out of the service and settled here in Missouri, and I wanted to engage the issue of military-related toxic exposure illnesses was kind of what got me into this line of work and what's probably relevant for this conversation. I did 12 of my 15 months in Iraq at the Al Tawatha nuclear complex, which we made into a combat outpost where we operated out of. And so for those that remember before the war, that was the site where the United Nations was looking for all the weapons of mass destruction. So they were going in the big hazmat suits and all of that. So the government decided in their infinite wisdom, we should put a combat outpost there. And so pretty much all of us that were there have had weird issues, neurological conditions, different cancers, these kinds of things. And when I got out of the service and I was engaging the VA, there was no help for me. They were not prepared to really take that on. It just never had gone anywhere. And I was really forced to go into the private sector and try to find answers to the things that I was dealing with. Number one, figuring out exactly what was going on with me. And so, I didn't want that to be the case for other folks. This is around the same time that the issue of the burn pits was, just starting to creep into the public awareness. And it was around the same time that the Obama administration had started the burn pit registry on the national side. And that was done as a model from a small little tiny nonprofit called Burn Pits 360, which was a coalition of mainly spouses of veterans that had been exposed to the burn pits. And they had put together this group to try to, advocate for their spouses. And that caught my attention, came onto my radar. And I became friends with the lady running that. Her name was Rosie Torres. And at that point, I was already well into the process of completing grad school over at WashU here in St. Louis. And I was pursuing a degree in nonprofit management so I could tackle this. And from there, I ended up out in Washington, D.C., working at another nonprofit, ended up leading it. It was called the Sergeant Thomas Joseph Sullivan Center. It was also dedicated to that issue of military toxic exposures. And we were working on, back those days, this is around 2014, 2015, what was to become the PACT Act. And so that was kind of how I got into that. From there, we found out that Congress really wasn't prepared to act on that, nor any of the major veteran service organizations were not really prepared to engage in that either. And so they had given me a task to go out and try to raise public awareness and build systemic momentum that would provide cover and concealment for the politicians to actually do their jobs, oddly as that is, and get engaged in that fight. So we just kept running into a wall. How do you do this? How do you do this? And so we turned to the veteran entrepreneurial space that has large followings. Grunt Style was the largest of them, and they readily jumped on board. And so that partnership began. Wasn't too long after that, Grunt Style had stood up their own foundation, the Grunt Style Foundation, and Tim Jensen, one of the co-owners there, asked me to come on board and lead it. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and we have been doing weird stuff together ever since, trying to right those wrongs that people, just conventional wisdom says really isn't worth engaging because there's just no way to actually get to those kinds of goals. And together we were able to get that PACT Act across the line with our friend Rosie over at Burn Pits 360 and the help of some public figures, most notably John Stewart and John Feel, who advocates heavy for the 9/11 firefighters and first responders that were operating at Ground Zero, which were suffering from the same type of illnesses that we were seeing coming out of exposure situations from the military.
So, Will, with that being said, when you came onto the Grunt Style Foundation, what's the primary focus for Grunt Style? What is your guys? What leads the charge for you?
Well, it shifted a lot over time. When I came on board, it was Grunt Style had been giving away about $500,000 a year to different nonprofits that serving different veteran interests. And when I came on board, we decided to kind of shift that into a different direction and start standing up our own programs and trying to do advocacy in these areas, like I was talking about earlier. So our main focus today, we are really kind of in three areas. The first area is our flagship program, which is Irreverent Warriors. This is kind of a peer group social interaction kind of a modality where we host these silky hikes, the old PT shorts. The Marine Corps loves them. They also known as Ranger panties. Maybe you might know them under that name. But it's a chance for veterans to come out and just have a good day, spend some time with people that share a common background, they speak a common language, and they can just be together with other veterans. And that's really kind of where that magic really happens. From there, we try to move them into our second area of focus, which is healing. It's the peer support goes a long way. But ultimately, you get that big dopamine spike, and then you go back into your life, and the blues start to come back after a short amount of time. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take our leadership folks that are heading these programs and train them on different ways to heal. And we believe that there's many paths up the mountain, and what may speak to one person may not speak to other people. And so we try to just have as broad of a buffet line as what we can possibly make available for people to learn about and find what interests them. And then our third and final area of focus is really in advocacy and continuing to do that work that's important, that is underserved and not well represented, or perhaps there are corporate interests that are hiring lobbyists to push agendas that are contrary to the interests of our veterans and our first responders.
So, Will, is Grunt Style Foundation strictly working with veterans, or are they working with the family of veterans? Who's the target audience?
Well, the target audience is veterans, their families, and first responders and their families. Some of our modalities are geared strictly towards veterans. Some are geared strictly towards first responders. But those are for very specific reasons. When we are wanting people to feel comfortable and kind of in that space, sometimes it's not necessarily helpful to involve spouses in that. People behave a little different when they're on their own and kind of reverting back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, sometimes much, much longer. When hanging out with other veterans is what they may kind of open up when, the family unit is present. But at other times, it is critical that we involve the families of all of our folks, whether that's a veteran's husband or a veteran's wife, veterans' kids. It's good for the families to really have that understanding of not just what these healing modalities that we're trying to promote look like, but also to ensure that the family moves together in unison in their healing journey. Because, one of the worst things that, you can have happen, as scripture tells us, is to be in a marriage that's unequally yoked in that way. And that can add to a lot of stress and a lot of tension that isn't necessarily helpful. So that's how that goes down.
Yeah, that holistic approach a lot of times is very helpful.
So now you've got the first responders and obviously the vets and their families and these approaches. Now, I know when you and I met several months ago, it was at the Kaufman's Fund. It wasn't really a cookout, but you were out back in the yard. You were talking about how you guys were getting into more the mental aspect and mental health well-being also, and supporting, I forgot what organization that was doing counseling. It was like a retreat or something that you guys were doing.
We sure can. That's one of our flagship efforts. It's called integration. And it's everything that I just described to you, all condensed down into one big, long weekend event. It's formally, it starts on a Friday and it runs through Saturday afternoon. However, people have such a good time there. When the staff comes out on Wednesdays to start getting everything set up at the venue location we have, people come to help out. And so I think our first year we ran that, we had about 8 people maybe that came to help out, but they had such a good time when we did our second year of our pilot program to kind of test everything. We had nearly 80 people show up on that Wednesday night just to make the weekend last a little bit longer. And what we're doing at this event and why it's so special, we run it out at the Sherwood Forest Campground in Quiver River State Park up in Troy, Missouri. And it's kind of like going back to summer camp. You know, you've got these cabins with these bunk beds, and you've got the big dining hall and the lodge. So it's got this really cool throwback kind of a vibe to it where people get to kind of feel like a kid again for the time that they're there. And then I bring in all the different modalities that I can possibly get brought together. So we bring out wonderful, amazing folks doing great work in the veteran space, like Kit Maxwell. She comes out and does our horse equine therapy. She teaching all about, you know, how horses and caring for horses and being around horses can play a role in mental health. We do breath work. We do sound therapy with singing bowls. We do nutrition. We do herbalism. We bring in barbecue competition teams. We even bring in shamans from the Amazon. As you know, the whole psychedelic assisted therapies is a big topic in the veteran community. So I bring in shamans from Colombia and Peruvian traditions. And, you know, we're out there just to educate people on what these different things are and see if it sparks their interest. And if it does, then we give them the information to go and tie into that. And then we have communal meals for lunch, breakfast, and dinner. And then in the evening hours, it turns more from a classroom type of an environment, which really isn't a classroom. We're sitting around in a circle, you know, in nature, kind of doing the old oral tradition way of connecting folks and conveying this information. So that's a lot of fun and peaceful in its own right. But in the evening hours, we do ceremonial type work. We work very closely with the Oglala Sioux out from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. So we bring in our Lakota brothers and relatives, and we hold the Inipi Sweat Lodge ceremony. It's very, you know, it's absolutely legitimate. It's not us playing, you know, sweat lodge out there in the woods. These are, you know, actual Lakota spiritual practitioners, you know, from the res. And this last year we did the Yawampi ceremony, which is also known as the Sacred Pipe ceremony. We're tremendously blessed to have those kinds of relationships with these high caliber practitioners and all these different disciplines. And we're trying to teach people ways to heal by, again, that holistic modalities of mind, body, and spirit.
So how often is this retreat available? Is it once a year? Is it twice a year? Or how often?
Well, we spent the last 2 years doing 2 different pilot runs to really make sure everything was as we wanted them. And I think we hit that in spades. So this year we will be having this event again. So this will be the 3rd running of it here in September. It's the weekend of September the 19th. And we're satisfied with it enough that we're taking it on the road. So we're going to be up in the Pacific Northwest this fall with this same event. We don't have the dates firmly nailed down on that. We're in the process of vetting out a couple of the different potential venues that we want to use. But as soon as we have that locked in, we'll share that information as well.
So, Will, what is the area of your service area? I mean, you just talked about the Northwest. You've talked about a few other things. I happen to know you've done something over in Indiana. So are you serving the entire United States? Or are you serving just a few states?
Yes.
What's your service area?
Oh, we are nationwide impact. We're actually international now at this point. We've got, for our Reverent Warriors chapters, we have around 78 chapters around the country. Most states of the Union, you can find an Irreverent Warrior chapter there, and we partner very closely with the VFW posts that are in those areas. We're launching our first Canadian Silkies hikes up this year up in Canada, and we have about 4 chapters over in Europe. So we're in England, we're in France, we are in Spain, and we are in Italy.
I got to see one of those silky runs on the 4th of July underneath the Gateway Arch, and it was quite fun.
With all these amazing events, can you give us a success story on how you guys have helped a veteran and or their family through a situation, and you know, why it means so much to you and that family?
Yeah, so what we're really trying to do is come at problems either upstream or in an intervention kind of a way of going about it. For the upstream things, that's our advocacy work. That's where we're really going in. Let's just try to solve what's at the root of these problems. And right now, the biggest focus that we're on is with this overprescription problem of psychotropic medications. These are your SSRIs, your antidepressants, your benzodiazepines. One of the primary side effects that goes along with that class of medication is an increase in both suicidal and homicidal ideation. So here we are, if you're a veteran that may be struggling or may be having a hard time, and you go to the VA for whatever reason, there's a very high likelihood that you are going to be offered this type of pill. In fact, 70% of all veterans inside the Veterans Health Administration has been prescribed these modalities. I went through that. Everybody in our entire foundation has gone through that. So we understand it very well, and we understand the negative implications that can go along with that and oftentimes make things worse. Now, when you look at the clinical data on these things, none of these psychotropics have ever been studied for longer than 6 weeks out. And there's definitely a reason for that. I won't get into that. It's very political and all of that, but they're not helpful. And when it comes down to the mild to moderate levels of mental issues that would maybe benefit from some type of an intervention, we find that these psychotropics are as effective as a placebo, and that's what the clinical research has shown. Now, if you are someone that's in more of a severe situation that needs a serious immediate, kind of a disruption to the spiral, then they do begin to show some kind of an efficacy. But the problem with them are, beyond just the other different side effects that come along with them, is really you don't become addicted to them, but you become dependent upon them. So like coming off of these things can be hellish. And we see suicide rates really spike whenever these medications are halted abruptly. So anybody listening to this, if you are on any of these classifications of pills, I'm not meaning to offend anybody or demonize them or cause anybody any anxiety over them, but definitely take a look into it. And whatever you do, certainly do not stop taking your medications, because that's when the problems can really begin. There's this nasty little thing called akathisia, which is where you come off these types of pills too early, and all sorts of terrible physiological responses entail. So I tell you all of that because that is our lion's share of our work and where we see the most impact, and where I have seen over and over again people starting to really get onto that road of recovery. And it starts with this rejection of the status quo. And what we need to do is we need to get in there and get informed consent, which is what these physicians and prescribers within the VA system are supposed to be doing already, but they don't. And the VA's reasoning on that is if we demonize these types of pills, it may encourage folks to not take these meds. Well, I'm okay with that, but we have to do it correctly, and we need to do it safely. So things that make my heart happy is these sex stories that I've seen where people have been trapped on these pills, and these pills are not meant to be on long term, but I routinely come across people that have been on them 16 years or more at this point. And many of these things, again, have these side effects that can make your life just a living hell. So being able to help people gain the awareness of what that is, the advocacy is really working well on that. But then it's what comes next, right? And we believe that replacement for that status quo is whatever it is that's special to you, that speaks to you, to put you on that path of healing. Because at the end of the day, we are the people that are healing ourselves. It's not the doctor that we go and talk to. They're helping, in talk therapy. They're guiding us and putting us onto the objective. If we are dealing with these pills, these things can cause a disruption and then get you caught right back into that cycle. Well, we want to reject that and put people on a path for, post-traumatic growth, as they say. Really get in there and connect to those things that speak to you and find a healthy way of healing and resolving some of these issues that you may be carrying with you from not even just the war. Oftentimes the biggest culprit is childhood, and a lot of people going into the military are seeking stability. Well, it turns out, surprise, the military is not exactly real damn stable. But you can get folks into these different types of healing modalities and find that peace. And we have seen that over and over and over again, where people are very reluctant. They're very skeptical of, oh, this is woo woo, or this is a little hippy dippy, maybe in some instances, sitting around and petting horses and listening to singing bowls and, all that kind of stuff. But then to watch them let that guard down. And I tell you what, I don't care how big of a bad, tough guy you are. You set some of these folks down into a nippy sweat lodge ceremony with the Lakota, and they go through what they call 4 doors or rounds of this sweat lodge, where they're singing and praying and talking and really sharing things that are on your heart. That can tumble even the most stout of walls.
So, Will, with your programming, like you've talked about several different things, but so if somebody wants to go to the outdoor, like you were just talking about with the sweat lodge and all of that piece of it, is there a cost to that? I mean, how do veterans get there, right? And what kind of expenses?
So it's a really reasonably priced deal. So it's about $100 for the weekend. If you want a food pass, I think it's $25 more. So it's very affordable to go in there. Now, if you're a veteran that's coming to us from the Irreverent Warriors program, which again we try to use that as kind of a feeder into some of these other efforts, we scholarship a lot of those. So there's no cost to those folks that may want to come in. We do that. We haven't ran out of money yet to make that offering. Of course, when we're producing our own events, we can kind of control some of those costs and eat it a little more than what if we were hiring people to come and do some of this work for us. So it's pretty flexible and very approachable.
Do they go to your website? Do they phone call in? Is there an application?
No, you just show up. We tickets go on sale. We're about to release those coming up here for the 2026 event. That should probably be online. I would say within the next 2 weeks is kind of the target date from today. And here, as we record this on March the 19th of 26, you can just go to gruntstylefoundation.org across any of our social media platforms as well. So again, gruntstylefoundation.org is definitely going to be your best avenue to see what's new and cooking there. But if you're on our social media, we are at Grunt Style Foundation on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Grunt Style FDN on X. And those are the majority of the ones. And our YouTube channel also, we have a lot of content on the integration event itself, and you can find us on YouTube at Grunt Style Foundation.
Now, for our audience and things, if they've been touched or feel like they want to support you guys and support the foundation, is it the same avenue to get a hold of you that way for volunteering or donations?
Yes, lots of different ways. Where we really need volunteers is in our integration weekends, coming out and just helping. Many hands make light work. We discount the cost of the event for those folks that join us in that effort. We have limited numbers of volunteer slots that are available, but we're definitely always looking to recruit people in for that, for the help. And then for our Irreverent Warriors program, that we're always looking for volunteers on that side. And you can go to Irreverent, that's irreverent, not reverent, so that's warriors.com. And you can also link from, again, gruntstylefoundation.org.
Now, Will, I personally want to thank you guys and everything you do for the veteran community. Sheila, do you have any more questions?
No, Will, you answered them well. It's like you've done this once or twice.
Well, thank you.
Now, also, audience, Grunt Style has its own podcast, and I believe Will's the host of it. Is that correct, Will?
We've got a whole bunch of podcasts. So we've got a large studio down in San Antonio. We run a couple of shows out of that, primarily our American Grit series. That's a long form content, kind of a discussion deal. That's filmed down in San Antonio with Tim Jensen, heads that. He's the president of our board. Here locally in St. Louis, we record two primary podcasts. One is called The Triangular Compass, which is where we showcase exactly what we've been talking about today, these different modalities. So we bring in these practitioners of whatever discipline, and we have them explain to us, what is it that you do? How does this magic happen? and how can people get involved? If you know, and it's not everybody's here in St. Louis. People are all over the country listening to these things, so we try to make it accessible for them to engage in these modalities from their area. Then we have our second podcast that we do out of St. Louis is called Gaslighting the Warfighter. And this is our advocacy platform. This is the one we use when we're trying to ramp up awareness or to put some pressure on politicians, whether it's here in the state legislature or whether it's on the federal side of things. And then we also have a radio program that we do here locally on Real Talk Radio Network on 93.3 if you're in St. Louis. That airs every Sunday morning at 8 a.m.
All right.
And that is called The House of Grit, and that's hosted by Tim Jensen and myself.
Tim. I've worked with Tim before.
Yeah, he's got the best voice in the world for radio.
Well, thank you for joining us here at Your Battles Rally Point. It's a pleasure, and I'm really grateful for everything you guys do. Again, if you want to support Grunt Style Foundation, please access their website with gruntstylefoundation.org and reach out either for support or to volunteer. Beyond that, I'm Cole Warner with Baldwin Priestmeyer and
Sheila Schneider, the executive director of the Kaufman Fund and a military spouse. Will, thanks again for joining us and all the wonderful work that you're doing to help veterans throughout the country, and we greatly appreciate it. And for those of you who are listening, please check into these resources. That's why they're there for. And if you're fighting your own battle or know a veteran who could benefit from the Grunt Style Foundation, you can find all the contact information and resources discussed on our show notes. And we appreciate you being here, Will.
I appreciate you having me. I'm a big fan of the Kaufman Fund. You guys are really an anchor in the veteran community here for St. Louis. You're kind of the rally point where everybody goes to circle up whenever there's things happening inside the St. Louis area. So anyway, that the Grunt Style Foundation can ever be of any assistance, and whatever it may be, it's an open invitation. You folks just say the word, and we'll throw our hands in to make some lighter work on those larger projects where we all benefit from all of us pulling together. So I'm pleased and proud to know you. I think the world of you guys. So thank you, Cole. Thank you, Sheila, for having me.
Not a problem.
Appreciate it. And if you need help, or if you don't need help and your battle does, please refer a friend. The whole point of Your Battles Rally Point is to help people get the right direction. So we regroup, recenter, refocus, get back on task, and make it happen, okay?
And remember, every veteran's battle is different, but no one fights alone. So until next time, this is Your Battles Rally Point with Sheila Schneider and
Cole Warner.
Stay strong, stay connected, and remember, there's always a rally point.
Follow